everybody, and welcome back to the Deep Dive.
You bet.
So today, we're getting scam-wise.
Right.
And honestly,
Uh-huh.
you want to pay attention to this one because we're talking about the evolution of online scams in 2025.
Yeah.
And it's like,
It's wild.
these scammers
Yeah.
went to some evil mastermind school.
Right.
They're using cutting-edge tech.
Yep.
They're preying on the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of their tactics are so clever, it's almost impressive.
It's true.
Almost. But don't worry,
Right.
because we've got the ultimate weapon against these digital bandits, knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge is power.
And to help us unpack it all, we have our expert here
Absolutely.
who's been tracking these trends and has some seriously savvy advice on how to stay safe.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
let's jump right in.
Okay.
What are some of the biggest scams that are on your radar right now?
Well, one that's been making headlines is what Interpol is now calling romance baiting. You might have heard it referred to as pig butchering in the past.
Oh, really?
They're shifting away from that term.
Why the name change?
Well, pig butchering sounds pretty brutal, right?
Yeah.
And it focuses more on the scammer's method.
Okay.
Romance baiting puts the emphasis back on the victim's experience,
I see.
which is one of emotional manipulation and exploitation.
So it's not just about the financial loss.
Right.
It's about the deep emotional impact these scams have on people.
Exactly. And that's what makes them so insidious.
Yeah.
They target your heartstrings, making you more vulnerable to their schemes.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is.
Okay, so walk us through this romance baiting scam. How does it actually work?
Okay, so imagine this. You meet someone online, maybe through a dating app or social media.
Okay.
They're charming, attentive, everything you've been looking for.
Uh-huh.
You start sharing personal details, developing feelings,
Right.
and then bam, they hit you with a sob story.
Like a sudden illness or a family emergency.
Right? Something that tugs at your heartstrings and makes you want to help.
Yeah.
And because you've developed this emotional connection,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's entirely online, you're more likely to let your guard down.
Makes sense.
Right.
So they build trust.
Yep.
They exploit that trust.
Right.
And then ultimately they go in for the kill.
Exactly. They might ask for money to cover medical bills or a business opportunity that requires investment,
Mm-hmm.
or even just help with travel expenses.
Right.
Whatever the end goal is, the same, your money.
It's almost like a psychological trap,
It is.
preying on our natural empathy and desire for connection.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to be aware of these tactics.
So how can someone protect themselves from falling victim to this kind of scam?
Right.
I mean, especially given that emotional component, it feels like it would be tough to stay objective.
You're right. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But there are some things you can do.
Okay.
First, remember that if something feels too good to be true,
Uh-huh.
it probably is. Be wary of anyone who comes on too strong too fast or seems to be showering you with affection without any real basis.
So trust your gut instinct.
Absolutely. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore those red flags.
Got it.
Another thing you can do is take your time.
Oh.
Don't rush into anything, no matter how strongly you feel.
That makes sense. Rushing into things can definitely cloud your judgment.
It can, and it's easy to get swept up in the excitement of a new connection.
Uh-huh.
But remember to keep your head on straight.
Yeah.
Do your research, verify their information, and be cautious about sharing personal details too quickly.
Okay, so we've got to be cautious about who we connect with online.
Yes.
But what about those scams that target people based on their circumstances, like immigration scams?
Those are definitely on the rise, sadly.
Yeah.
And they prey on people who are already in a vulnerable position, desperate for help and hope.
So tell me, what do these scams typically look like?
Okay.
What should people be watching out for?
Well, imagine you're new to the country, navigating a complex immigration system.
Right.
You're overwhelmed with paperwork, deadlines, and uncertainty.
Uh-huh.
Suddenly, you get a call or a message from someone claiming to be from an immigration service.
And they offer to help.
Exactly. They promise to expedite the process, guarantee a visa, or even offer legal advice.
Oh, wow.
But here's the catch.
Okay.
They demand upfront payment, often through untraceable methods like wire transfers or gift cards.
So they create a sense of urgency and prey on people's fears.
Exactly. And they might even threaten deportation or legal action if you don't pay up.
Gee.
It's a truly heartless scam,
Yeah.
but unfortunately it's becoming increasingly common.
I've even heard they're using video calls now, posing as immigration officers to make it seem even more legitimate.
That's right. They're using technology to their advantage.
Wow.
Which makes it even harder to distinguish a genuine call from a scam.
So in that situation, how can someone even begin to tell if it's real or a scam?
This is where verification becomes absolutely crucial. Government agencies typically don't contact individuals through unofficial channels like WhatsApp or Zoom for official matters.
Right.
If someone reaches out claiming to be an immigration officer, don't panic.
Okay.
Instead, take a breath and do your research.
So independently verify their claims.
Absolutely. Check the official website of your country's immigration agency, look up their contact information,
Mm-hmm.
and reach out through official channels.
Got it.
Never rely solely on the information provided by the person contacting you.
That's solid advice. And speaking of technology,
Yeah.
there's another element adding a whole new layer of complexity to this world.
Right.
Artificial intelligence.
AI.
How is AI changing the scam landscape?
Yeah.
And what makes AI scams harder to detect?
Well, this is where things get really interesting
Okay.
and a little scary.
Right.
We've got these incredible generative AI tools now that can create realistic deepfakes.
Deepfake, that sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
We're talking about video calls where you see and hear someone you trust, maybe a family member or a colleague,
Right.
but it's not actually them.
Oh, wow.
It's AI generated.
So it's not just about being careful about who you interact with online anymore.
Right.
It's about questioning what you see and hear.
Exactly. The level of skepticism we need to have has to go way up.
That is seriously unsettling. It's mind-blowing and honestly a little terrifying to think how this tech can be used for scams.
It's true. The potential for misuse is huge.
Yeah.
Imagine getting a video call from your bank asking to verify your account details.
Oh, gosh.
Or maybe it's your grandchild claiming they need bail money.
Right.
With deepfakes, it's getting harder to rely on what we see and hear.
So how on earth can we protect ourselves when we can't even trust our own eyes and ears?
It comes down to a few things.
Okay.
First, heightened awareness.
Okay.
Know that this technology exists
Mm-hmm.
and that scammers are using it.
Right.
Don't blindly trust any video or audio call, especially if it's unexpected or involves sensitive information.
So be extra cautious, even if it seems to be coming from a trusted source.
Exactly. And this is where verification comes in again.
Okay.
If that bank calls,
Uh-huh.
hang up and call the official number on your bank statement. If
Right.
your grandchild needs help,
Yeah.
contact them directly through a known number.
So basically go through a separate channel to confirm,
Right.
rather than relying on the one that initiated the contact.
Exactly.
Makes sense, but what about those situations where you can't easily verify, like someone randomly contacting you on social media?
That's where being alert for red flags is crucial.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about emotional manipulation?
Right.
Scammers using deepfakes often ramp up the urgency and emotional pressure.
I see.
They want you to act quickly without thinking things through.
So they might claim it's a life or death situation or play on your fears to get you to react impulsively.
Exactly. So watch for that.
Okay.
If someone is pressuring you to act immediately without giving you time to think or verify information, that's a major red flag.
Got it. Okay. So it sounds like a healthy dose of skepticism is key.
It is.
But beyond that, are there any practical steps we can take to protect ourselves in this wild west of AI-powered scams?
Absolutely. One thing you can do is strengthen your digital security.
Okay.
Use strong, unique passwords for all your accounts.
Right.
And consider a password manager,
Okay.
which can help you generate and store those complex passwords securely.
I've heard of password managers, but never actually used one.
Yeah,
Are they difficult to set up?
not at all.
Okay.
Most are user-friendly and even have free versions.
Nice.
It's like having a digital vault for all your passwords.
Right.
And you only need to remember one master password to access them all.
That sounds a lot easier than trying to remember a million different passwords. What else can we do to bolster our defenses?
Enable multi-factor authentication wherever possible.
Okay.
It adds an extra layer of security by requiring you to confirm your identity through a separate channel, like a code sent to your phone or email.
Got it.
It makes it much harder for scammers to access your accounts, even if they somehow get hold of your password.
That's a great tip. It's like having a double lock on your digital door.
Exactly.
So we've got strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Right.
Anything else we should keep in mind?
One of the simplest yet most powerful things you can do is talk to your friends and family about scams.
Yeah.
Share your knowledge, warn them about the latest tactics, and encourage them to be vigilant.
I love that it's about creating a network of informed and empowered individuals.
Yes,
It's like a neighborhood watch, but for the online world.
exactly. The more people who are aware of scams and how to avoid them, the harder it becomes for scammers to succeed.
And speaking of helping each other out, what should someone do if they realize they've already fallen victim to a scam?
Right.
It can be embarrassing to admit, but it's important to know what steps to take, right?
Absolutely. First and foremost, don't blame yourself.
Okay.
These scams are designed to be deceptive, and
Yeah.
anyone can fall victim. The important thing is to take action as quickly as possible.
Okay, so what's the first step?
Contact your local police and report the crime.
Okay.
Even if you don't think they'll be able to recover your money,
Right.
it's crucial to document the incident and create a paper trail.
That makes sense. Is there anyone else we should report it to?
Yes, definitely report the scam to specialized agencies like the Internet Crime Complaint Center.
Yeah.
They collect data on cybercrime, which helps track trends and combat these scams.
Got it.
And if your identity has been compromised, the Identity Theft Resource Center is a great resource for guidance and support.
It's good to know there are resources available even after you've been victimized.
Absolutely.
And I remember from our prep for this episode, the FTC has a website specifically for identity theft recovery.
Yes, absolutely. It's a fantastic resource with step-by-step guidance on what to do if your identity has been stolen.
That's incredibly helpful information.
Oh.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
Right.
From romance baiting to AI deepfakes, it seems like the scam landscape is constantly evolving and getting more sophisticated.
It is.
It can feel overwhelming, but I think the key takeaway here is that knowledge is power.
I completely agree. The more we understand about how these scams work, the better equipped we are to avoid them.
Right.
It's like having a mental toolkit for navigating the online world safely.
Speaking of toolkits, earlier we talked about some general security measures like password managers and multi-factor authentication.
Uh-huh.
Can you break those down a bit more for our listeners?
Sure.
I know those terms can sound a bit technical,
Yeah.
but they're actually quite simple to use.
They are. Let's start with password managers.
Okay.
They're essentially digital vaults that store all your passwords securely.
Right.
You only need to remember one master password to access the vault.
Got it.
It's much safer than using the same weak password for multiple accounts.
So it takes away the pressure of remembering dozens of complex passwords.
Exactly, and it encourages you to create strong, unique passwords for each account.
Right.
Which is crucial for security.
Okay.
Now, multi-factor authentication adds an extra layer of protection.
Uh-huh.
It requires you to provide 2 or more pieces of evidence to prove your identity when logging in.
So it's like having a double lock on your door.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It could be something, like your password,
Right.
something you have like a code from an app on your phone,
Okay.
or even something you are like a fingerprint scan.
Makes sense.
It makes it much harder for scammers to access your accounts, even if they have your password.
That makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like these are relatively easy things to implement.
They are, most online services offer these security features now.
Yeah.
It just takes a few minutes to set them up.
Okay.
And it can make a huge difference in protecting yourself.
I love how you framed it earlier as adding more tools to your online safety toolkit.
Yeah,
I think that's a really empowering way to think about it.
it is. It's about taking control of your online security and not feeling like a helpless victim.
That's a great point. And before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier
Okay.
about how scammers often use emotional manipulation or create a sense of urgency to pressure people into making decisions.
Right.
Can you give some examples of what that might look like in practice?
Sure, think about those SMS messages claiming to be from a delivery service saying your package can't be delivered.
Oh,
They often create a sense of urgency, hoping you'll click the link without thinking.
right.
Or imagine a dating app scenario where the scammer suddenly has a family emergency and desperately needs money.
Yeah.
They're playing on your emotions to cloud your judgment.
It's almost like they're trying to short-circuit our rational thinking
Exactly.
by triggering an emotional response.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be aware of these tactics. When
Yeah.
you feel that pressure or that emotional tug,
Yeah.
take a step back, breathe, ask yourself, does this make sense? Is this something I would normally do?
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Pause, breathe, and think. Don't let those emotional triggers lead you down a dangerous path.
Absolutely. And remember, if something feels off, it probably is trust your instincts.
Yeah. It's about recognizing those red flags
Yeah.
and not being afraid to say no, even if it feels uncomfortable.
That's right. Your safety and well-being are worth more than any awkwardness or potential embarrassment.
Yeah, it really is a wild world out there, and it's constantly changing.
It is.
But like you said, we don't have to be helpless victims.
Right.
We can take control of our online security and make it much harder for scammers to target us.
Absolutely. It's all about empowerment through knowledge and action.
And speaking of action, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier
Okay.
about verifying information.
Right.
It sounds simple enough,
It does.
but in practice,
Yeah.
What are some practical steps that someone can take to actually verify identities online?
Okay, great question.
Yeah.
So let's say you get an email from what appears to be your bank
Okay.
asking you to update your account details.
Uh-huh.
Don't just click the link in the email.
Right.
Instead, open a new browser window and go directly to the bank's official website.
Got it.
You can also look up their contact information independently and call them to verify their request.
So don't rely on the information provided in the initial contact.
Right.
Go directly to the source.
Exactly. And if someone contacts you out of the blue claiming to be from a company or organization, do your research.
Right.
Look them up online.
Oh.
Check their website and see if you can find any news articles or reviews about them.
That's a good point. Don't just take their word for it.
Right.
Do some digging.
Do some digging, exactly. And remember, if something feels off, trust your gut.
Yeah.
It's better to be safe than sorry.
You also mentioned earlier the importance of sharing our experiences with scams,
Yes,
even if it feels embarrassing.
it is.
Why is that so crucial?
Sharing our experiences helps create a network of awareness.
Okay.
When we talk about scams, we educate others and make it harder for scammers to operate in the shadows.
It's like shining a light on their tactics and taking away their power.
Exactly. Plus, it normalizes the experience and reduces the stigma associated with falling victim to a scam.
Right.
It lets people know they're not alone and encourages them to come forward and seek help if they need it.
So it's about creating a sense of community and support,
Yes.
which is incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. We're all in this together, and by sharing our knowledge and experiences, we can make the online world a safer place for everyone.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your incredible insights.
It's been my pleasure.
This has been an eye-opening deep dive into the world of scams, and I feel so much more equipped to protect myself and my loved ones.
Doing so good.
Me too. And to all our listeners out there, we hope you found this episode helpful.
I hope so.
Remember, the best defense against scams is knowledge and awareness. Stay curious, stay safe, and stay scam-free.
You got it.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment, and tell your friends we're back next week with another fascinating topic. Until then, stay curious and stay safe.